I lost everything overnight, my money, my business, my pride. But the worst part wasn't the bankruptcy. It was watching my wife walk out, leaving me alone with our disabled son to chase another man. For years, I struggled, broken and abandoned. But 10 years later, the tables turned. And when she came crawling back, regret written all over her face, I realized something she never did. True strength isn't in wealth, it's in loyalty and love. This is my story. My name is Stephen. I'm 38 years old, a father to Ken, my adorable 7-year-old son. 10 years ago, my life fell apart in ways I never expected. I used to think money was the glue that held everything together. I had a thriving business, a comfortable home, and a wife who smiled at me like I was her whole world. But all it took was one bad deal, one miscalculation, for the empire I built to collapse like a house of cards. At the height of my success, people envied me. I was the man others pointed at in restaurants, whispering about the car I drove, the house I owned, the lifestyle my family enjoyed. Friends leaned on me for financial help. Relatives called me the pillar of the family. My wife glowed beside me at parties, wearing jewelry I had worked hard to buy. I thought I had it all figured out, but I had ignored the warning signs. That one deal was supposed to secure us for life. I trusted the wrong partners, believed promises without reading between the lines. And by the time the truth hit, it was too late. The day I signed the bankruptcy papers, I felt like I'd failed as a man, as a provider, as a husband. My pride crumbled with my fortune. I expected my wife to stand beside me, to remind me that love was stronger than numbers on a page. Instead, her silence was heavy, her touch cold. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of overdue bills. When she finally looked at me and said, "I can't live like this," her words hit harder than any financial loss. I stared at her in disbelief, my chest tightening. Like what? Without the cars? Without the parties? We still have each other. We still have our son. But her eyes had already turned distant, as though I were no longer the man she had married. At first, I thought she meant she was scared, that she needed reassurance I'd rebuild. But within a week, I discovered the truth. She wasn't just leaving me because of money, she was leaving me for someone else. Another man, someone with deeper pockets and a smoother future. The night she walked out, she didn't even pack quietly. She argued with me, blamed me, told me I'd dragged her down. Her voice, once sweet and supportive, now dripped with contempt. "You had everything in your hands and you ruined it," she shouted as she shoved clothes into her bag. "Do you expect me to suffer because of your mistakes?" I stood there frozen, watching the woman I once adored spit venom at me like I was her enemy. And then she looked at our son, our beautiful boy, born with a disability that made life harder, and she chose not to take him. She left him with me, like he was baggage she couldn't afford to carry into her new life. That night, my heart broke twice, once as a husband and once as a father. I sat with my son in my arms, rocking him gently as he asked why mommy wasn't coming back. I had no answers, only tears I tried to hide in the darkness of our living room. Raising a disabled child alone is something no one can prepare you for. The nights were long, the days even longer. Therapy appointments, medical bills, constant worry. I would look into his eyes, so innocent, and wonder how a mother could walk away. The morning started with a rush, packing his school things, preparing his medication, ensuring his wheelchair was ready. I carried him upstairs when elevators failed, wiped away his tears when other children teased him, and fought battles with schools that wanted to treat him as less. But in my darkest moments, he was my light. When I wanted to give up, he gave me a reason to keep going. He would smile at me, hold my hand tightly, and remind me that love didn't leave. It stayed, even in the smallest gestures. The world looked at us with pity. Neighbors whispered. Friends vanished. Family members gave excuses. It felt like everyone abandoned us when the money dried up. But I refused to abandon my son. The years that followed were a blur of survival. I worked odd jobs, anything I could find, cleaning, construction, even driving long nights. Every dollar I earned went to keeping food on the table and making sure my son got the care he needed. Sometimes I'd come home after a double shift, my hands blistered and my back aching, only to sit up late filling out forms for his next hospital appointment. Sleep became a luxury. We lived modestly, sometimes too modestly. I sacrificed everything I had, even meals, so he could have enough. There were nights I drank water to fill my stomach so he could eat. At night, when the house was quiet, I would think about her. About the woman who once promised to love me through sickness and health, wealth and poverty. I wondered if she ever thought of us, or if the man she left us for was enough to erase her guilt. But then I would hear my son stir in his sleep, whispering, "Daddy," and I knew that I couldn't afford to dwell on what was gone. One night, after a long day of work and hospital visits, I tucked my son into bed. His small hand clutched mine and he whispered, "Daddy, don't leave me." Those words burned into my soul. From that moment, I made a promise. No matter how hard life got, I would never abandon him. I would fight until my last breath to give him a future worth living. I stopped looking back. I stopped waiting for her, and I poured every ounce of my strength into being the father he deserved. I told him stories at bedtime, stories where heroes never ran away, stories where fathers stood tall, even when the world tried to break them. And as I spoke, I realized I was also telling myself my own story, one I would live, not just tell. It wasn't easy, but little by little, life started to shift. My hard work paid off, opportunities opened, and I found my way back into business. Smaller, humbler, but honest and steady. I started a small repair shop, fixing things with the same hands that had once signed contracts for millions. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me dignity. Word spread, and soon customers began to trust me again. My son grew stronger than anyone expected, full of laughter and courage. Every milestone he reached felt like a victory we both earned. His first independent step, his first award at school, the day he told me, "I'm proud of you, Daddy." Those moments stitched together the broken pieces of my soul. We didn't have riches, but we had something better. Peace. We had joy in simple things, sharing ice cream, watching sunsets, laughing over silly jokes, and most importantly, we had each other. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. 10 years had passed since she left. By then, I was no longer the broken man she abandoned. I had rebuilt, not just my finances, but my heart. My son and I had found our rhythm, our strength. And then, one day, she came back. It started with a message, short, hesitant. "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for hours, my chest heavy. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part burned with questions I never thought I'd ask. Why now? Why after all these years? My son noticed the message and asked, "Who's that, Dad?" I swallowed hard, unsure how to answer. When I saw her again, I barely recognized her. Time had not been kind. Her eyes looked tired, her voice weaker. She admitted she had made mistakes, that the man she left us for had betrayed her, that she had nothing now. And then she said the words I never expected. "I regret leaving you. I regret leaving our son." Her voice cracked, tears streaming down her face as she reached for my hand. But I didn't move. For years I had imagined this moment. I thought I would feel satisfaction, maybe even revenge. But instead, all I felt was emptiness. I let her speak. I let her pour out her regrets, her apologies, her excuses. But I never once interrupted. When she finally finished, I looked her in the eyes and said, "You left us when we had nothing. Now that we've built something, you want to come back, but you don't get to call yourself his mother anymore. You gave up that right." She cried, begged, said she wanted to make amends. But my son, now old enough to understand, looked at her with eyes colder than mine and said, "I don't need you." That was the end. 10 years ago, I thought losing money was the worst thing that could happen to me. I was wrong. The real loss was watching the woman I loved abandon us. But now, looking back, I see it differently. Her leaving forced me to grow, to fight, to become the father my son needed. She thought wealth was everything. She chased it and lost. I thought bankruptcy was the end. But it became the beginning of a new life built on loyalty, sacrifice, and love. If there's one truth I've learned, it's this: money comes and goes. Loyalty, love, and sacrifice, that's priceless. And that's the life I chose to build.
Thank you for listening to the story of heartbreak, betrayal, and resilience. Life doesn't always go as we plan, and sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who cut us the deepest. But even when everything else falls apart, strength, love, and loyalty endure. Some wounds may never fully heal, but they leave us with something priceless: the truth of who we are when the world tries to break us. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because every story here is raw, real, and unforgettable. This was Lies and Regrets,